Greetings and salutations, guys. I'm here with my thoughts on episode 4 of Daredevil Born Again. I do want to sing We Built This City on Rock and Roll, but I don't want to, disturb the Kingpin. I do love the idea that song is like nightmare fuel for Wilson Fisk. It's like a recurrent thing he cannot escape. Very funny little runner joke, I thought, through this episode. These episode reviews I'm doing of Daredevil Born Again, a little behind the scenes here is I'm binging Born Again over a weekend and stopping after each episode to record these, so any speculation I do is pure. But I have this time budget because Disney, they pull the screeners at a certain point. You don't just keep them through the season like on some shows. So I have to watch these quickly and then say my thoughts quickly, which means I'm not really thinking about anything. I'm not like sitting down and taking time. These are just spewing out, for better or for worse. But yes, we built the city in rock and roll. That was my big takeaway from this episode. And that's it. I have said before that I've been waiting for Matt to get back in the Daredevil costume. We didn't get it here, but he's training at the end. He's getting ready. He's doing some Billy Club training on a rooftop. So that's good to see. He's got his row of masks. I think we're very close to him putting that back on just because I like Daredevil in my Daredevil shows. So, I do want them to kind of get back into that actual, Daredevil on a rooftop realm. But once more, I think we're almost there. Almost there, indeed. We got Punisher back in this episode. Just one scene. Look, this was the first time that Charlie Cox and John Bernthal shared the screen as, Matt Murdock and Frank Castle in 9 years since Daredevil Season 2. So it was just kind of cool to see those characters together again. Bernthal is always so great, in general, but also in this role. It's definitely one that's a perfect fit for him. I had to remind myself when he was just referring to Matt as Daredevil. I was like, wait, does he know? Oh, yeah. He saw him without the mask at the end of Daredevil Season 2. Again, the last time they saw each other 9 years ago. They never talked about it. They didn't discuss the fact that Matt was Daredevil, but Frank saw him, Matt knew he saw him. So that would be something that they could just sort of pick up and talk about here. It was kind of returning to this idea of Frank still thinking that, the fact that that Matt won't cross this line, he sees as kind of cowardly. And it was interesting, their conversation about Bullseye and the fact that, he is locked up, but that, to Frank, that's not real justice. That, the fact that he lives and Foggy is still dead, that is not balancing the scales for him. And I liked Frank talking about sort of the voice of his son. It's grim, right? This voice of his son telling him to kill them all. It's like Pamela Voorhees hearing Jason in her head.
Kill her, Mommy. Kill her.
Frank Castle and Pamela Voorhees. Never thought about them as kindred spirits, but I guess this episode of Daredevil Born Again lets us know that they are. I continue to have sort of mixed feelings on the Wilson Fisk, Vanessa therapy storyline. There are some things about it that I do think are interesting. I liked Heather kind of taking Vanessa aside to say, do you feel okay? And learning Vanessa still does, despite everything, that she does feel like that's a line that Fisk won't cross is hurt her. Although at the end of the episode, she does ask Wilson point blank, maybe am I wrong? Maybe should I worry? Will you hurt me? I thought it was a little silly when Heather asks about Adam. Not that she would ask about him. That's not silly. But just the direct, tell me about him. What was it about him? Instead of the, why would you have an affair? Which was all understandable. And Vanessa explaining that she felt so abandoned. But yeah, just the fact that Vanessa would go into he's the things he would do, the sketches, the art. But that does bring me to the muse of it all. We saw Muse explicitly here on screen. A character we knew was going to be in this, a villain from the comics, who is this sort of dark, macabre artist. And we saw him taking a guy and dragging him to this place. And it was very sort of gross body horror almost, what was going on there. It is interesting. We don't know who's playing Muse. No one is listed as playing that character in the closing credits. So is this a whodunit? Or is it doesn't matter? Because I will say in the comics, his identity didn't really matter. They didn't kind of go into it. There was no big reveal. And maybe that's what they're doing here. or maybe it is someone hidden in plain sight. But it's funny because when Vanessa talks about Adam as being an artist, you might think, oh, maybe it's him. But then it can't be, right? Unless something very strange is going on. I don't think it is. The fact that we see at the end, the reveal at the end that Adam is Fisk's prisoner, that Wilson, he kept his promise not to kill Adam, but he has locked him up as this sort of dark prisoner of his. That means he wouldn't be Muse. It's just funny that they would bring up this character who's an artist right as we're seeing Muse. But, maybe this is just a lot of art. Hey, Vanessa is an art collector. That's her thing. So this is a runner. Adam, by the way, played by Lou Taylor Pucci, best known for opening the Necronomicon in the 2014 Evil Dead film. So we'll see sort of what happens with that character and how that continues through here. I liked all the stuff with Matt and, Leroy. I mean, this is like obviously not important as far as the lore of it all, but again, continuing Matt just has a lawyer doing his job, something that I do think the original series sometimes didn't do enough of. I thought that they were almost like avoided these sort of one-off, or not one-off because maybe there'll be more about it, but these smaller scale things that would be part of Matt's life and his cases. I like that intertwining, and it deals a lot with sort of questions of social issues and this conversation they're having. It's very direct, with Leroy talking about the fact that they're spending more money to keep him locked up than to feed him. This is the stuff that I think is great for them to tackle, and we'll get. I just know they're out there on the internet right now saying woke, aren't they? Of course they are. But no, I think this is great to sort of discuss this stuff head on, especially with a character like Daredevil, because he's such an interesting sort of the morality of him, and he's such a staunch believer in the justice system and the legal system, but only to a point. Otherwise, he wouldn't be running around as a vigilante as well. And so for him to kind of think about this with his clients and, Leroy kind of really having this strong stance that I won't even go to jail for 10 days for stealing, a box of fiddle faddle. That's ridiculous. And so the sort of fight that brings up for Matt. It's funny when Matt was interacting with Sophia, the girl who works for the city, who they were figuring out what to offer as sort of the deal, the plea for Leroy. They were very flirty. I mean, maybe that's just the fact that Matt is, this flirty guy, because he's dating Heather. So I don't think this was setting up that he's going to cheat on Heather. It was just kind of interesting thing to sort of see Matt in his everyday life, and the fact that the ladies love him, and he certainly has a way with the ladies. So that seems like these two characters have this flirtatious history, maybe, as they're always kind of figuring out the different circumstances around Matt's different cases. And I like that. I like sort of again seeing these different aspects of Matt's life. And then the stuff with Fisk and how he is operating. Look, it's impossible to avoid thinking of our current president. It's just going to keep coming up, I think. But this situation with what's going on with Fisk and, the fact that he doesn't want to abide by any rules, any decorum. He just says, smash it through. Why do I have to follow any of the, regulations, any of the way things are done? I just say it should happen. The only difference here is that when Sheila says, no, you actually have to follow these rules, he does listen. Which is, I guess, a key difference. But it is very interesting to have this happening at the same time. They didn't know when they were making the show, either version of this show, that Trump would be reelected at this point. But, it does sort of hang over this series with this depiction of Mayor Fisk. But yeah, it was definitely a fun thing. I mentioned the song up front, but just seeing Wilson Fisk have to deal with the minutia and the stuff that's sort of silly about being a politician, and having to go to these different ceremonies and appearances, and how much it's sort of driving him absolutely crazy. And yeah, maybe this sort of ticking time bomb element of his. And of course, that all kind of comes up with Blake and him being an idiot and revealing to BB what's going on, and the fact that Fisk is, going behind the backs of unions as he's doing these new recycle plans. And yeah, that scene with Fisk and Blake was very good, where Fisk basically, he's so furious, and Vincent D'Onofrio is so great at showing that fury. And then Blake owns up to it and says, hey, it was me. And then he forgives him, but then he says, that I can't remember the exact wording, but basically say, oh yeah, here, if you ever do anything like this again, it will be the last thing you ever do. And we know from Wilson Fisk that is a very direct threat. I mean, he really means that. We don't know how much Sheila's in the room with them. Does she take it as seriously as he means it? I am curious about the Sheila of it all. She's kind of the career politician. She has that line to Blake about how she was here before Fisk and Blake. She'll be there after. But how much is she going to start to realize the guy she's working for that, he'd literally kill Blake if he feels betrayed again. And so, yeah, I think that might kind of come into play. And then circling back to Frank, the fact that the bullet casing had the Punisher logo on it that Matt finds, and Frank's kind of dismissive of it, and he has that line about BS fanboys. So we kind of know that this is not a new thing, that the idea that people are emulating Punisher, which makes sense, and it's something that we've seen, the Dark Knight and some other films have done, about the idea that, there'd be copycats, there would be people who are trying to act like vigilantes. Now, Punisher, of course, is a whole different thing because he murders people. He just goes out and kills people with his own idea of how justice works. And so Frank's dismissive of it. This is obviously not going to be the only time we see Frank Castle now. So Matt has to kind of go off on his own. But yeah, he's training. He's getting ready to go into battle as Daredevil again. And then I want to mention Angela, which is Hector's niece at the beginning. Look, I think even if you don't know the comics, you might think, oh, interesting, very upset niece talking about her uncle, the hero. Comic book spoilers from 20 years ago or whatever. This is a character created by Brian Michael Bendis, who is a consulting producer on this show and wrote a lot of very integral, pivotal, and great Daredevil stories. And yeah, she becomes the new White Tiger eventually, which I don't think would be shocking. They hired a pretty young actress. I don't think she's going to be costuming up at the end of this season or anything, but I think she's just there, right, for the idea that she can eventually become the new White Tiger, and that would be a character that maybe we can pick up with a few years from now down the line in another season of Daredevil Born Again or somewhere else in the MCU. So, because that's kind of the fun of it being this interconnected universe. Anything else leaping out at me as I glance through my notes? No. It's interesting to sort of see these different, when I was mentioning that obviously Punisher was coming on the last episode, I forgot to talk about Muse as even a factor in this show. So there's a lot of different elements here. I mean, Bullseye was name dropped again in this episode. So I like that. I like that, it's a heavily serialized show, but I really loved the Netflix show too. I think it was overly serialized in the fact that they didn't give themselves time often for subplots and for these sort of mini arcs. And I like that this show is, I feel like, kind of intermixing that more, even though I don't think this show has quite yet met Netflix Daredevil at its best. I do think how they're kind of showing how maybe you can kind of take a different tactic with the character that might work very well in its own way. So once more, cross my fingers, Matt is going to costume up in the next episode that I'm about to watch, and I guess will be airing in a week after this video goes up. All right, those are my thoughts on Daredevil episode 4. We'll see if that song comes back to haunt Wilson Fisk one more time. We built this city on rock and roll. I do like that. I like that a lot. I mean, first of all, I just think it's an enjoyable song, and yeah, it will haunt Wilson Fisk forever and ever. Maybe he'll use it now as torture against poor Adam. All right, if you can subscribe, that'd be great. Thanks, guys. Be back for the next one. Take care.